Nós temos hoje aqui conosco uma das mais importantes figuras do mundo. Provavelmente um dos maiores humanistas até esse momento do século e certamente até o final. Kailash, como é conhecido, é um indiano, engenheiro de formação, que, por diversas razões que nós vamos ver aqui hoje, se transformou em um militante da causa contra o trabalho infantil. E nesse processo, depois de longa luta, inclusive ameaças de morte, ser baleado, sobreviver, ganhou o Prêmio Nobel da Paz em 2014. Nós vamos conversar. Por uma questão de dificuldades linguísticas, eu vou tentar falar com ele em inglês, ele vai responder e vocês terão a tradução. It's a great pleasure to meet you again.
Thank you. It's my honor. Always a pleasure to be with you.
I remember first time we met, long time ago. I was governor of Brazil, and we had the same commitment against child labor and children in school. And after that, we met in different parts of the world. And we had something in common. We are both engineers.
That's true.
This is why I want to start asking you, how did an Indian engineer become a humanist fighter?
Well, the issue of children was very close to my heart right from my own childhood. Though I was not a child laborer, but the very first day of my schooling was the opening of my eyes. I was 5.5 years old and entering into school. I saw a cobbler boy sitting along with his father, and he was looking at me and other children who were entering into school with empty eyes. Perhaps he wanted that we will give him some job of shoe shining, but all of us were wearing new shoes, new uniform. So that was the first shock I got. So when I was introduced in the school, my classroom, the first question in my life I asked to my teacher that, "Sir, why a boy is sitting outside and not with us in our school, in our classroom?" And the teacher tried to convince me, it's not uncommon, the poor children have to work and have to earn money, they need not to go to school, they have to earn and feed themselves. Same answer was given by headmaster and my other friends and family members. But every morning and afternoon I used to go to school, I saw that boy again and again and again. And that made me very angry from inside that nobody was answering my question. So one day I gathered all my courage and went straight to the father and son. Son was also of the same year old, maybe 5 or 6 years old. So I told to his father and asked that, "Sir, why don't you send your son to school?" And he looked at me surprisingly and answered, "We have never thought about it. My father, my grandfather, and I started working since childhood, and so is my son." Then very miserably, with pain on his face, he answered that, "Sir," he told me, "Sir, you don't know that we people are born to work." So that was his answer, but it was a challenge for me that why some children are born to work at the cost of their childhood and education and health and freedom, more importantly. How long we can just keep on making compromises under the pretext of poverty. I started seeing the world with a different eye. But my parents, my family members wanted to make me an engineer. So I studied hard, I got admission, I got a scholarship, and I passed out as engineer. But during my whole student life, I was trying to oppose injustices, I was trying to help needy children. Even when I was 11 years old, I saw that many of my colleagues have left the schools because their parents could not afford textbooks. They are expensive. So on the day when the school results were declared, I decided that let us organize something. So I convinced one of my friends. So when my parents gave me some money for buying some sweets or chocolates on the day of school results, because they all know that I am going to be topper or at least getting good marks. So I used that money in hiring a four-wheel pull cart, which is used normally by the fruit vendors. And I was standing on the cart and my friend was pulling. We did turn by turn. And I was chanting, aunties, uncles, mothers, fathers, congratulations, your sons and your daughters, your grandchildren have passed and gone to new grade. So people started coming in and watching what is happening in this theater on the road. And then I said that when I saw that there are crowd, there are people, I said that think of those children who left the school because they could not afford books. And from now, all your books and your children's books will go waste. So why don't you put in my cart? And I tell you, Brother Cristovam, that it was a new experience for me. Each time a book was put on the cart, I felt that I am getting power from inside. And within few hours, we were able to collect more than 2,000 books, almost 2,500 books. So then I decided that these books should not be simply given as charity, but let us create a book bank. Good. So with the help of teachers, we created a book bank so that the needy boys and girls can borrow books for 1 year and return it. So slowly this sense of humanitarianism developed inside me. But finally I passed out as an engineer. And I made up my mind. I spoke to my wife that we are not going to live a decent life and I will give it up. So finally we decided and I quit my job as an engineer. That was a tough decision, very tough decision for my family, my friends and relatives. But I was determined that I will follow my heart without knowing how to help these children. I wanted to help these children, but since child labor, child slavery, these issues were non-issues. There was no literature, there was no document, there was no law, there was no research, nothing, no talk about it. So it was tough. But my humanitarian inside me overpowered an engineer, as happened in your case, more or less.
More or less.
So, and you have chosen a different path, but very strongly driven by the sense of humanitarianism and a philosopher. You carried it on, even in the politics, I know.
I know. How old were you at that time of the books bank? In what city in India?
I was born and grew up in central India, that is called Vidisha, an old township, small township. That time the population was about 40,000. Now it is about 200,000 or so. So I was 11-year-old that time. 11, yeah.
Good. Listen, it sounds to me strange that almost 50 years after to send a man, two men in reality, and the others to the moon, we are still talking about child labor, slavery. We made some mistakes, the humanity. Where do you see the mistake we made in our evolution? Evolution that can put the man in the moon and the others things even wiser. And we could not put every child in school, even now.
Yeah.
Millions still are out of school and working instead to study. Where did we, human persons, we made a mistake?
I don't think that there was any mistake made. The human history is mix of goods and bads. The evolution went like that. So when these two streams sometimes meet, sometimes confront, sometimes compromise, then new stream is born, and that is a new evolution towards civilization. As we say in Indian philosophy, that human is made of three essential characteristics. What are those three? One is Satogun, what we call. Satogun means the enlightenment, the conscience of humanity and human being, positivity and truthfulness, that is on the top. That is connected with a kind of divinity, a divine thinking, or a more humanitarian thinking. The second level of, the second characteristic is what we call Rajogun. Rajogun means the quest for power, hunger for power. And the power could come through knowledge, through prosperity, through guns, or your control on the pieces of land, fighting and dividing lands, and so on. That was the history. And the third is Tamogun, means the negative characteristic, where you grab the things and think negatively against the truth, more untruthful behavior, and so on. So these three characteristics, sometimes they are connected, or sometimes they are struggling with each other, and it goes like that. The waves, three waves are confronting with each other. So in the human history, we see that there are times where the very ordinary people in communities tried to help others, tried to create more harmony and peace. But on the other hand, there were handful people who controlled the power, because normally the middle path, the path of power, is dominated power. When you become more enlightened, then you go towards truthfulness and divinity. When you are in the lowest level, then you are going towards negativity. Normally, the middle path has taken a strong segment of society, or normally takes the strong segment of society, and creates a different kind of power clique, you can say. So the knowledge power, the power of religions in most parts of the world, and the power of kingdoms, and power of prosperity. All these things were combined together, and sometimes they overlap. Sometimes they oppose each other, and when they oppose, then there are other kind of struggles come. But when they support each other, then a small segment grow very fast. And that small segment reaches to the moon. That can conquer Mars. That can try to conquer even Pluto, and goes and takes pictures through the satellites. So these things happen. But that segment of society feels that it is an advancement of civilization. So advancement of civilization is driven by a universal or immortal force of power hungriness to achieve something and achieve more. But on the other hand, when a small segment of society goes faster and leaves millions or billions of people behind without care, and that is a kind of growth of apathy in the society against empathy, against compassion. And growth of apathy creates a lot of problems in the society, which we see now in different forms. And so the civilization is a very interesting, the evolution of civilization is very interesting phenomena, as you know.
Yes, translating from the Indian philosophy to a more Occidental, the Indian philosophy is a lot more beautiful. It's not it's very easy to explain. You have 5,000 years of philosophy. You just have 500 years. And I will translate that, saying that this civilization has ethics and techniques And we put techniques in front of ethics. We discuss how to build cars instead to discuss how to have better transportation. So we discuss, we put income and not well-being. So in this case, we discuss how to develop a country to produce more, instead to say how to develop a country to have all children, every child in school. We change the purpose of civilization. I think that you have to put back ethics in front of technical advance. My question is, how can we do that? Because today I am a politician, but each day I have less hope in politics. I have to say that I have no hope in the other way to do politics.
Yeah.
But the way we are doing politics today cannot carry with the global problems and long-term problems. So how can we, people like you and some others, humanists, to care about the development of civilization, to try to change the range, to change the destiny, the road, what we are taking?
I think that the so-called development or growth or technological advancement or technique, you said, technology. This is basically a quest for truth. All scientists, those who did researches in the pure science, they have a hunger to find the truth in the material world. Chemistry, physics, geology, everything. They tried to invent the truth out of existing or conventional wisdom. So they were revolutionaries in their own way, how to go next step down to dig out the truth. That is one. And the pure science was respected for years, but later on the pure science has been converted fast into applied science and then technology, and the technology was immediately converted into industry and market and consumerism. So it has gone opposite. The pure scientists were researching the truth of the nature, the truth of the material, not the truth of the humanity. Anyway, but they were looking for truth. Now, there is a compromise between the science and technology and market and the consumer demand. Like I use a small phone, smartphone. The smartphone is, when I buy it for comfort, but there is always a pressure on the engineers that they have to create a better smartphone so that they can sell, the companies can sell in the market fast.
Yes, yes.
So the pressure is on the science now.
Yes.
Earlier the science was free.
Yes.
Now science is being used or manipulated by the market forces. So that loses ethics. But the ethical drive is not something which should be controlled by the fear. If you always been made afraid of temples and churches and mosques and afraid of your priest and all these things, in that sense the religion would be driven. The so-called ethic under the garb of religion would be driven by a fear that if you do this thing wrong, then you would do a sin and then you will not go to heaven or whatever. I would think that the journey of truth should be a fearless journey. We have to be fearless. So our mindset should not be driven by any kind of fear or any kind of compromise or very wasted self-interest of earning more money, which is science or which technology does more more or less nowadays. How we can create a society which is fearless society, which is not driven by any kind of fear. That means a society which has free minds, free thinking, can question. So, but interestingly, many of those new ethics are emerging as the result of fear which we feel, which we see. We are now talking of harmony and brotherhood and love and compassion to each other because we are threatened by the growing terrorism. That is reaction to terrorism when we feel that we have to build brotherhood, relationship. Similarly, we are under serious threat of global warming and climate change. So that's why we are talking that we have to protect our water, our resources, our earth, our environment. That is because of threat. We don't love human beings because of free mind. We sometimes forced to love human beings because of threat. We love nature or ecology or earth because of threat. So I think we have to work towards freeing the minds of children. And that is possible. I think that that is possible if we are able to connect the human beings through compassion. And my role in my life is that I wanted to convert this human value or virtue of compassion into a social movement, into a mass movement. So globalization of economy is not going to solve the problem. The problem would be solved to globalize compassion. So ethics should be driven by compassion, which is inherent in each one of us. Ethics should not be driven by the reaction to fear or threat which we see in the world.
Good. We will follow after some time.
Yeah.
Nós estamos de volta ao nosso papo com Kailash. You finish our first part of the program talking about the philosophy that made the evolution of humankind. I want to talk now about the future. What kind of change we have to do to change the progress, the kind of progress? You talk about harmony. I would put beauty. You talk about truth in science. I'd like to say that we need to bring back science to the purpose of truth, because today I think that science is more concerned with weapons and consumption goods, more than truth in itself. So what do we have to change to have a new kind of development, or even another word, another evolution? And what are the role of the politicians?
You had loaded questions in one question.
Yeah, that's true.
That's why you are a combination of engineer, politician, philosopher, and a visionary.
And I hope one day a poet also.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Just a hope.
Okay, lovely. I would love to read your poetry.
I have
in
no
English.
one yet.
Yeah. So we should go somewhere and stay together for a few weeks, and both of us should write poems.
Good.
Anyway, so first of all, why we need change? You were talking about change. But how comes later than why? Why we need change?
Yes.
And what change? Because how, why, what are intermingled. But let us begin with why. One reason is that we have created a world due to our wasted interest, due to our hunger for power, due to consumption. We destroyed earth, we destroyed water, we destroyed air. So we are sitting in the brink of destruction. So this problem is not the problem of one country or one society. the danger which we are facing of ecological destruction and human destruction. Before 9/11, the politics of the world was different, the perception towards society was different, but suddenly one incident has shocked the world, that the terrorism which is born and grew up in some part of the world can affect the so-called safest heaven on the earth, and that was United States. So it was a shock. It had happened in Britain, it had happened in Paris recently, it had happened in Spain, let alone India or Pakistan or Syria or other places, Nigeria, South Sudan. So it has spread, the terrorism. So on one hand, we are very happy that we are globalizing market so that some forces can earn more profit out of it at the cost of land, at the cost of raw material, at the cost of cheap labor. But on the other hand, we are pushing the world to a stage of deep destruction. So if we have to protect ourselves, if I have to protect myself, I can never protect myself until unless I feel that I am connected with you and others, and we all together have to be protected from global warming, from global terrorism, from global economic slowdown which comes, and some countries may mitigate fast, but other countries cannot. So we have to realize that why we need to change the world. We have to change the world because we already brought the world to a stage of danger. So we have to confirm and we have to believe in ourselves that no problem on the planet is an isolated problem, and no solution in the world could be found in isolation. We have to find the solutions together. So that drives us to work together, to think together, to find solutions together with each other. That is one of the most important reasons. And secondly, the tensions have been created when the knowledge, most sophisticated knowledge, is controlled in the hands of a fewer countries or fewer people. How we create a world which is more democratic world? The democratization of knowledge, the democratization of information, the democratization of science and technology will create a world which is a safer world, because then we empower the lowest strata of society in the world and try to make a world which is much more harmonical, which is much more equitable. So that is important. I think that the most important thing to ensure education for everyone.
Yes.
And when I say education in the present context, I cannot talk only in in a very idealistic manner. I have to mix the present challenges and the future possibilities. The education, what I called 6E education. 1E is education. The second E is employability. How we can generate employability through education. But employability has its limits. So entrepreneurship, the third C. The fourth C is equity. How education can bring about equity in the world. And then we have to see the fifth C as efficiency. Efficiency in production, efficiency in every walk of life. Efficiency is also a technical term related with science and technology, that how we can consume in such a way that with little invest in energy and little or minimum possible investment on ecological things like water or like earth materials with maximum output. So in every walks of life we have to see this. And finally, but most important, is ethics, which you also mentioned. So education with ethics, education with employability, equality or equity, entrepreneurship, that kind of education should be promoted. And that is not possible without advancing the value of global citizenship. I see that we are losing a whole generation. We are losing a whole generation. Millions of children and youth, 100 million, more than 100 million, when 168 million children are child laborers. When in the world 59 million children have never been to school. When 120 million children were forced to leave school, what we call the dropout, but it is basically pushed out because of socio-economic reasons or whatever reasons. The failure of the state or failure of society, they are pushed out. So many million children are deprived of their childhood. Millions of children are living in violence and conflict areas, which they are not responsible for, war zones. So we are losing that generation. And on the other hand, the children and youth who are in schools and colleges and universities, what kind of alternative we are giving to them? We are prescribing them materialism. We are prescribing them consumerism. Then we prescribe them careerism.
Individualism.
Individualism, because careerism eventually leads to individualism, that you have to acquire something which others may not. Because the so-called competitiveness, the competitive world in this modern interpretation of capitalism is something which is pushing you to become more individualistic and selfish. And selfishness creates more fear in the society. Disconnect creates fear. So individualism creates disconnect, and disconnect creates apathy, selfishness and fear. So that is a full chain. So large number of young people are misguided in a way. They are nice people. Youth are full of energy and enthusiasm. They are full of hunger to do something good for the society when they grow up slowly. The idealism is an element, the morality is an element which is in every young child, young person. But we prescribe them, we season them with a different kind of notion of the world. So we are losing that also. Because in this competitive world, where so much confusion and difficulties, large number of young people I see, I work in more than 100 countries, and I see that youth and children are becoming more and more impatient and intolerant. And that intolerance is growing into violence. Violence in words, abuse, violence in schools through sometimes sexual abuse or verbal abuse, sometimes bullying. Violence is growing worldwide. No country is safe. In United States of America, in Europe, you cannot say that children are free of violence. Their violence is growing. So this is a serious challenge, I feel. So what I am thinking now, and definitely you would be a great strength as my elder brother and an old friend, and I hope that in Brazil I will find millions of supporters eventually. I am planning to launch human history's most ambitious and biggest over campaign, what I call 100 million for 100 million. 100 million young people are deprived of their childhood. 100 million youth are willing to offer and do something for the society. Let us connect. Let us create a generation of togetherness.
Good.
A global citizenship.
Well,
they can work for each other.
Very good.
So that we are going to work on and going to launch soon this year.
With that, we will have 200 millions happier.
200 million.
Happier, both of them.
Yeah, both of them are interconnected.
And a better world to all of them.
Better world. They are going to create a better world, but that will have a ripple effect.
Yes, yes.
Because that has a potential.
We are going to multiply.
Multiply, yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Because we will use the social media, which is very, very easy now. So through social media, they can quickly connect with each other. They can learn each other's problems. They can be the petitioners. If something is going on in a country, they can demand that this is wrong. They can be the change makers. They can be the champions and leaders for each other. And we are also going to work with the universities, student groups, youth groups, unions, teachers groups, everyone. That we have to address the full generation in our lifetime so that we can change the entire generation this time, now, so that the next generations will take care for themselves and create a safer world. Now, the challenge is, I would say there are three things, Brother Cristovam. One is growing apathy in our society, growing intolerance. This is a serious problem, intolerance, and growing fear. We don't know why we are afraid of, but we are afraid of with our own people. We are not so free in our minds. We are very worried in our mind, stressful minds, because we are driven by fear. So let us address the problem of intolerance by global citizenship. Let us try to address the problem of apathy by compassion. Because compassion is the mother of all religions. Compassion is the mother of all revolutions in the world. Somebody was compassionate to see the pain of others and realized that, no, I am not going to accept this injustice. Revolutions were born. Somebody became Jesus Christ, somebody became Muhammad, somebody became Ram, Krishna, Dayanand, and so many people, Vivekananda in India or all over the world. Gandhi, Buddha. They were sensitized because they have an inherent compassion. And I don't see any difference between them and you and me and all other people. Ordinary people have the same compassion. And that's why the apathy had to be fought with that. And the courage is the answer to fear. Let us speak out truth. And that we have to build in our young people.
You can count on us. I'll not say only me, a lot of Brazilians. But you made me to remember two things here. One is a Brazilian senator, a lady, called Heloísa Helena. She's no more senator. She used to say something that I liked very much. She used to say, if Brazil, we can say the word, if Brazil adopt a generation of Brazilians, this generation will adopt Brazil. That's what you're proposing.
Exactly.
To adopt 100 million, to adopt 100 million.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
We have to do that.
We cannot afford to just put it aside. We cannot afford, because as you rightly asked question, that change, why we need change? We need change because so many things, but the answer could lie in young people.
Yes,
I have more trust. I agree with you that
I would say children.
Yeah, children and youth, of course, because politicians have their limit, which is your philosophy.
Yes, my philosophy is that.
And your philosophy and your experience.
Yes, more experience.
More experience. And I have never been a politician, but I have experienced this in the whole world, that the politics has a limit. Businesses has a limit. Science has the limit. Yes. Unlimited science also has a limit.
Compassion has no limit.
Compassion has no limit. And I need not to become a humanitarian. Nobody need not to become a humanitarian, because every human being has a content of humanitarianism inside. Just identify it and use it.
Yes. The other thing I remember is one thing you said in Santiago. I was present during your lecture, and here at the Senate. You told the story of a girl that you brought out of slavers, and she said, where were you up to now? Why did you come early? Is that? I'd like you to talk about that. And I would say, you said we lost a generation. I am afraid that some years from now, in the Brazilian history, some people would say, where were you at all? because I will not come in time to bring them out of slavery, out of no education.
Absolutely.
This is what I'm afraid. I was very touched when you said the story of this girl. But anyway, for her, you were there, you personally, and you brought her out of slavery. But I'm afraid that a lot, millions and millions, will ask, where were you?
Yeah, but in your case, you need not to be afraid, because not only this country, but the world will remember that there was a person named Cristovam Buarque. Cristovam Buarque was the one who tried to lit the candle and kept the candle always with him. People see or not see, but people see because light has its own power. So having said that, I remember this story because it always haunts me. So many stories. I have liberated more than 80,000 children. God has given me this opportunity. These children and their parents gave me this opportunity. Each time when I free a child, I think that I am freeing myself. I am not freeing them. Who I am to free them? This is God who frees them. They are freeing me. One day, I came to know that a group of slave laborers, intergenerational slaves, grandparents, parents, children, parents were born and grew up there. The stone quarry owners got them married so that they become husband and wife, and finally the third generation was born and grew up. It was not a new thing for me. I decided to go and rescue those people. I found that this stone quarry where about 50, 60 people were living. Most of them were born in, grew up there. That quarry belongs to a politician and a very powerful mafia kind of person. So we could not take the police help because police was on their side. So I did a kind of recce the whole night with my colleagues, my friends, and very early morning, about dawn, we conducted a undercover rescue operation. I did it hundreds of times, so it was not new for me. So we collected all those people. They wanted to be free because one of them escaped from there and came to me some weeks ago. So on the basis of that, we went there. So we asked everyone to get into a truck. And normally in such dangerous operations, I drive myself because it's very dangerous. Sometimes the drivers could be bought. I have been beaten up. My left leg is broken. My right arm is broken. My backbone is broken. I lost 2 of my colleagues. So I was cautious about it. So I kept most of the children, maybe 11 children in my car, bigger car, and I was driving fast early in the morning. And then I saw that these children were shocked to see the road and buildings and everything because not only they, but their parents were born and grown up there. So I tried to make them happy. And I said that, look, in the back, there are some bananas. Bunch of bananas were lying in the back, leftover of our night party, in a way. So children looked at the bunch of banana. They could not understand. I said, pick up this green, yellowish thing. They picked up, believing me. And I said that, please eat. This is good thing. So one child said, oh, this is not an onion. Then a girl who was sitting just beside me said, she touched it and she said, no, this is neither a potato. What is this? I said, this sweet thing. But they have never tasted sweets in their life and no fruits. Then I told them to eat it, insisted them. So they started eating, some of them. Some of them did not like and throw it. So I just noticed that they started eating without peeling it. And I realized that it was a simple thing, but it is a distance between the human slavery and freedom. Centuries old distance in just peeling banana. Then I taught them. I was almost in tears. And I told that, you eat this like that. So girl ate. 8-year-old girl, or less than 8 years. After a while, I heard her strongly asking, angrily, "Oh man, why did not you come early? Why didn't you come early?" It was not because of banana taste. It was because she has seen the death of her brother in her lab without medication. She has seen that her father was branded and beaten up because he was raising voice against sexual abuse of his wife. And that's why the girl gained the faith in humanity by questioning me. This was her question, but this was the question of 100 million children. This is the question not for me. This is the question for everyone who believes in humanity and religions and justice and constitutions. So that is the question of urgency. We have to act with urgency.
Listen, we have no more time, but I want to put a question. I hope they will accept, the people, the TV. We both created this movement of parliamentarians without borders for the right of children. What can we do for the Mediterranean children? We have just 1 or 2 minutes.
Politics has limits, but there are politicians who are really committed. There are parliamentarians in many countries, most countries. We have to identify them. The idea is that since the problems are not the localized problems, the child labor, child malnutrition, child education, child health, all these are interrelated problems. And there is a need of strong political voice globally. And that's why, under your leadership, this Parliamentarians Without Borders for Children or for Child Rights has been created in Nepal recently. And many parliamentarians from many countries, from 9 countries took part in it. But we are receiving positive responses from many more countries. And hopefully the next meeting will take place in Netherlands, because the Dutch parliamentarians invited us to host that meeting. So we are going to advance the fight against child exploitation with the support of hundreds of parliamentarians.
I hope I'll be more.
We will win.
We have been together for 20 years. I hope we'll be 20 more years together as brothers.
I tell you that I am not going to die before ending child slavery, and I am not going to let you die also.
Nós tivemos privilégio de assistir a conversa com essa grande figura que é o Kailash. Mas eu gostaria de ter o privilégio dos que viverão daqui a alguns anos e poderão ver uma entrevista como essa como uma coisa histórica. Nada a ver mais com o presente. Lamentavelmente, ainda é o presente. Ainda é o presente o trabalho escravo, crianças fora da escola. Mas com pessoas como o Kailash, nós vamos fazer com que, no futuro, os que assistem esse programa vão dizer: olha como era o mundo naquele tempo.